Hello and welcome to Connect to Love here on PRN-FM, where each episode is a journey of discovery into the many facets of our connection to love, oneness, and the human spirit. I'm LeRose, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Michael J. Russ. I want to say welcome to you. It is always such a delight to explore how we live from the heart and rediscover the essence of our loving kindness that connects us all. I'm so excited, Michael. It's always so wonderful.
I completely agree. That is such a beautiful opening. Yeah, I'm here. I'm loving it. And, another day, another wonderful show, and a great topic as well for us to ponder and think about and cavort about. Just gonna love it.
So we're in the midst of the change of seasons here in the Northern Hemisphere. We're about to transition from summer into fall. And anybody that knows me knows that I am not that fond of fall. Although I do love the colors in the leaves and the crispness in the air, I am not that fond of the darkness. But I do love Halloween. We know what it is. I love spring. I love when everything's being born into being. And I don't mind fall. It's just I know that winter's on its way. And the days are dark.
Winter's a little harsh, right? Yeah, we're about to do that Sean King next week, I think.
Yeah, I think so. But it is. And the days are getting shorter, but I love the light. I love being outside and nature, but we're in the energy of Halloween season, which I do love. I love Halloween. I love dressing up. And it's so much fun to see how people express themselves. There's really something magical about having adults and kids alike having an opportunity to play and be creative and express their hidden passions. But I was thinking there's really sort of a paradox that I'd love to explore today. So what happens if our real superpowers are revealed, not when we put the mask on, but actually that they're revealed when we take our masks off and uncover what has been with us all along? What if the superpowers have been hiding beneath the mask that we wear every day? I had a server this past week and I asked her, I said, are you doing anything fun for Halloween? And she said, yes. I said, what are you dressing up as? And she said, Wonder Woman. And she said, I've been wanting to do it for so long and I just feel like it's me. And I said, well, yeah, absolutely. Look at all the amazing, wonderful things you do every day. Maybe you're not flying in an invisible plane and have a magic lasso, but she juggles 3 or 4 jobs and she is always upbeat and smiling and happy. And I said to her, yeah, you're the perfect Wonder Woman. And for me, I'm the woman of wonder. That's what I always used to say. We used to do a show with Glenn Brooks and he would always ask, what is your superpower? And I said, wonder. For me, I like to consider myself the woman of wonder because there's so many things, especially when we finish a show, Michael, that I wonder about. And I takes my mind on all of these wonderful journeys down all these different pathways and opens up new doorways. And oftentimes I'll discover new books or a video that you send me, and it just gets me wandering down a path of amazement and is a beautiful journey for my soul, I think. So if I had to ask you, Michael, if you took off your mask and unveiled your superpower, what would that be?
I thought you put the mask on and use the superpower. I don't know, that's kind of backwards to me, but no,
You're probably right.
Something invokes your superpower. Connection. My ability to connect with people and my voice. Those are the two things. I have this uncanny ability to make a friend anywhere, anytime. That's it. It's wonderful. I was sitting around having lunch in the street in this small little enclave called Rosemary Beach, not too far from where I live, and had a little cobalt with us. So we're just hanging out there, having some lunch outside. We take them there a couple times a month. And to commune with people, and the server loves little cobalt. And so she served us yesterday, I think it was. And the bottom line of this is that I was wearing my shirt that says positivity is everything. And I stepped up to say something to the young lady who was standing at the hostess stand. And this guy walks up to me and says, I love that shirt. And I said, thank you. And we got to talking. And the interesting thing is that as long as you can find something in common with someone, you can connect. Turns out the guy owns automobile dealerships in Alabama, and he's retired down here. And what a nice guy. I thanked him for his comment. And we introduced ourselves. His name was Forrest. And we said, hey, if you see me here on the street again, please say hello. And he says, I will. It's interesting that I can I love walking, in fact, into rooms where I don't know a soul and just kind of looking around and kind of being there and assessing the energy and just literally walking up to a perfect stranger and giving them a compliment about something that I find interesting. Not a matter of being insincere. It's a function of just noticing something about people, because what they're wearing, generally, I can tell what kind of person, what kind of personality they have. I assess their vibe. I love assessing people's vibes and what kind of light they're bringing to the party. And then it's just connect with them. And sometimes, I'd say 99.9% of the time, it works out because my comments aren't meant to be invasive in any way. They're meant to be just wonderful compliments about something that I've found interesting about them, and ask them where they're from. And what's interesting is that people love to talk about themselves. So being a good listener is key to connecting with people. It's not all about you. In fact, it's about them. And I remember that at all times. And it's fun when you go to Halloween parties, you get people that have costumes on. The immediate thing to talk about is their costume. Let them talk about their costume. You find out the most about them when you just give them an opportunity to express themselves. And costumes are, this time of the year, are the way that people bring out the special je ne sais quoi in them. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Halloween invites us to play it. It lets us be kids again. I mean, even if you're out with kids and you're taking your children trick-or-treating, it's fun. It's fun to see the other kids' costumes. It's fun to sort of experiment with your identity, and it gives you the freedom of imagination to express yourself. But when you said that question about taking your mask off or putting your mask on, it it's sort of a paradox, because when we put a mask on, it frees us from that judgment so we can reconnect with that playfulness, the essence of the soul. But the ego also masks itself. And that's why I said, like, if you unmask yourself, and I think we mask ourselves our ego does, to seek safety, acceptance, and validation, but it hides our authentic radiance. So it is like, if you drop your mask for a moment, you can ask yourself, what would I allow myself to be? And I think that that's sort of what we do with this show. We express and explore what our hidden passions are and our untapped superpowers. Yet sometimes we're caught up, we have to put these masks on of conformity. And it keeps our true essence hidden, because sometimes we don't know if it's safe or not. And I was very interesting. I watched a video the other day, and it was about a social experiment. And they had three actors, and then they had all of these chairs. And it was for a job application, like an interview process. And so when this person who was not the actor walked into the room, they tapped on a bell, and the three actors sat down. And so the other person sat down. But when he walked in the room, everyone was standing up. And then they hit the bell again, and then he stood up. And then they brought in another applicant. And it was interesting because the first three actors, every time the bell rang, they would either sit down or stand up. And if there was an individual that came in that wasn't conforming, they would say, come with me, and they would take them out of the room. And so it was just the three actors, and then I think there was 7 or 8 other people. And then they removed the three actors, and they still continued to ring the bell. And when the bell rang, people would either sit or stand up. And I thought, geez, isn't that interesting? Isn't it interesting how quickly we conform? And I think that that's part of recognizing they have their mask of nonconformity that they took off. They said, I don't need to be like everybody else. I don't know why we're standing up and sitting down. And they were removed from the room. So everybody was looking at them thinking, maybe I shouldn't do that. But it's
Right.
sort of an interesting point to ponder, for sure.
I believe so. Yeah, it's interesting. If I were standing in the room, I'd probably wonder, why was the bell ringing and where's it coming from? wouldn't be thinking about sitting down or standing up. I'm going like, where's that cell coming from?
Right, exactly. But you don't trust your inner compass. This is what we talked about last week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You guys, you're, that's so true. That is exactly right. I would be thinking about myself and wondering, why am I here? What is going on here? And how can I get to the bottom of this? Probably open the door and say, hey, what's going on out there? No. What's with the bell?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's kind of obnoxious. Can you turn that down a little bit? Am I waiting on someone? It's interesting. Curiosity in me is big time when it comes to strange things like that. Interesting events. It was interesting. We were playing golf last weekend, and there is a organization here in America that takes care of and fixes up World War II airplanes. And I had known that this weekend there was going to be a B-29 at our airport out here with a fighter from 1944, 43, 44. It was the fighter basically that helped win the war against the Germans. But the B-29 is a completely all aluminum, extremely shiny, beautiful, beautiful plane. And I'm sitting there playing golf with Sandy in the morning, and I hear these engines roaring. I'm going, wait a minute, that's the B-29. And here it comes. It's just in the sky, flying. It's beautiful. It's graceful. I took some video of it that I'll have to send you. And I took 4 videos of it because it was giving rides to people. You could get in and take a ride around on it over the Gulf and back. And the interesting thing about it, and the reason I'm saying it is because when I see that sort of thing, my father was in the Air Force, and I've seen many of those planes. I've been in many of them, actually in museums and other places in California, and it's unique. It just kind of brought back the kid in me when I was back, walking through those things and those planes. And I had a client who was a B-17 pilot, and we walked through a B-17 with him. And it's so cool. Somebody asked me, the most interesting question to ask me is where I'm from. I get that a lot here because I don't sound Southern. I'm in the South, and they can't figure out where I'm from. And so they ask, and I say, what I tell them initially is, I have many chapters in my life. And they go, really? Yeah. And I'm not really from anywhere. I mean, I was only 3 weeks in the place that I was born in, Niagara Falls, New York. So I'm not really a New Yorker. I was a preemie, and my dad had orders to go to Alaska, Anchorage, Alaska. And I was born, and we had to wait until I could travel. So back in those days, 5.5 pounds was a premature baby. Nowadays, I'm not so sure what qualifies as a preemie, but fact is that I was there for 3 weeks in that hospital, Niagara Falls Memorial, which doesn't exist anymore. And we were off on the adventure of a lifetime with me, driving across the country and up the Alaska Highway, which at that point was a gravel road, all the way from Seattle through Vancouver and on up to Anchorage. Not that I remember any of it, of course. I was way too new as an infant for any of that, but I've seen film of it, and it's really cute, But I remember, I'm simply saying, when you talk about unmasking and people ask you about where you're from, and because they're all so curious, when I start talking about the various countries I lived in and places we moved and how many high schools I went to and how many schools, they go, whoa, and they get a sense immediately of who I am on the surface, from a factual perspective, geographically. However, what's interesting is that every place we are, if we move around a lot, we garner a little bit of that place in ourselves and the experiences that we have there. So if you have many places that you've lived, then how can I put it? The masterpiece you're creating has many, many, many colors. You take something from each one of those places in terms of your journey in life and your growth and your personal evolution. And I've got a lot of them. And it's easy for me to convey how I feel And because I like to talk about feelings a lot with people, I like to get people talking about their feelings because that's how I really find out about someone. It's the facts are the facts. They don't necessarily tell you anything about a person, but when they start telling you how they feel about things, feel about the facts, that's when you really discover who they are and what they're resonating. And, because the rest, they can hide behind the facts. People can hide behind facts. I went to school, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a this, I'm a that. Yeah. How do you feel about being a doctor now? And they'll tell you. And that's how you find out about them and where they stand on things. And it's really neat. And anybody I get the opportunity to speak with about it, I tell them, when you're connecting with people, quickly get to the feelings part. Just ask them how they feel. Don't ask yes or no questions. They say, I'm from so-and-so. Yeah, great. How you feel living there? And then they'll tell you. You have to be quiet, though, and listen. And the real them will come out. Now, with the mask or no mask, it doesn't matter to me whether somebody has a mask or not. I can still discover their inner essence by speaking with them. You can't hide behind a question like, how do you feel about that? You can say you're from XYZ or, ABC or wherever, and you went to so-and-so school and you got this kind of degree and all that, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't really tell you about someone. And when you get to the feelings, that's when things begin to open up. They become more. Let's put it this way. I've had people tell me things that I've had women tell me things that their husbands don't know when they don't even know me. And that's a really interesting point to get to. And when they say, my husband doesn't even know this, or my boyfriend doesn't even know this, or my mom and dad don't, my family doesn't even know this. I go, I respect it. You've got my trust. It stays with me. And when you're really speaking to the essence of someone when they get to that particular point. And it's fun to learn about people, fun to learn about what they desire and where they want to go and what they want to do, where they want to take their journey. Based on you speaking about yourself, they open up, and it's fun.
Yes.
Really, mask or no mask.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mask or no mask, you can still do it. The mask doesn't matter to me. Let's put it that way, because people will still talk.
I love it, Michael, because what you're saying, and then this is what I'm hearing, is that you're actually seeing the other person's divine essence. It's what you're seeing in yourself. You're remembering you're understanding that you're not defined by a job or by a birthplace or whatever. You have this incredible essence of magnificence that you came in with. And both you and I read Shaman Dorek's book, Spirit Hacking, and in the book, he described about, and I look at it sort of as an unmasking, the process of freeing ourselves from the illusions, fears, and the program beliefs in society so that we can, he said in our upbringing, we have these that have layered over our true essence. And if you remember in his story, he was not allowed to be a shaman.
Correct.
That's right. He wasn't allowed to. Kept from that. It was sort of looked and frowned upon. And he said that when you start to remember your original soul code, that energetic blueprint of who we were before we came into this world, that's when we actually live this authentic self. And it's interesting that we can both read the same book and we have different things that we take from it. But he said when we hack the spirit, he said we're not breaking anything. We're reprogramming those old patterns and the false narrative so that we can awaken. I really think that as we're unmasking ourselves in that framework, we're taking off the mask of conformity comparison, like as those people were in that experiment, and also fear of not fitting in, fear of not measuring up, fear of not whatever it is. And then we have the opportunity to live from a more authentic place and ultimately reveal our own unique superpower. And I love that your superpower is connection because it's such an important thing to be able to tune into the divine essence of somebody and really see who they are. I absolutely love that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's the fun part. Yeah, it's I've had people tell me that their I don't connect with people very well. I don't remember names very well. And I generally at that point say, well, if you could, what if you could remember people's names? What if you could connect with people better? How would it make you feel? What would you do? Where would you go? And then they'll ponder it and either, you know, speak from the heart or about it, or they'll generally approach one of those angles. And I think that we come into this life. Yes, as Sharma Duke says, having a purpose. We know that we have a purpose, we have a mission. Sometimes we have several missions on different levels. I believe that I have different missions on different levels, and I believe you do too. And most people do things they want to accomplish as a soul to ascend to the next level, to get that next badge, so to speak, overcoming a fear, moving through a challenge, a life challenge. And there are people who are caught in a trap in their mind with regard to how events in their past and their childhood have shaped them. They've allowed themselves to be shaped and don't really know that there's a way out, there's a way through from that trauma or whatever they experience doesn't have to define them and in this life, and that it is another way of perceiving it, another way of looking at it, another angle. And I'm going to say, interestingly enough, I did run into somebody last Friday that was so knee deep and so buried in the identity of the trauma that she experienced that she herself brought up. I did not ask. That's what I'm talking about. You got to be, you're gonna get everything when people really start talking when it's really imprinted on their subconscious. Any question about something that has um, a collateral association. In this particular case, it was a political thing that she was very, very, very upset about. And what I said to her is that it sounds like you're making yourself out to be a victim of this situation, of this person, or this situation, this political event, or whatever it was. And you know that when that happens, you lose your power. You become powerless over it to control your feelings. And I said, personally, I don't get that involved. That's not where I'm going. And when I mentioned the idea of victim, all of a sudden she started talking about she associated that word with her childhood trauma. And all of a sudden I was in a space where she was defending herself as a victim. She started to defend herself as a victim. And I'm like, whoa, whoa. That literally you cannot see yourself as a victim and in one thing and not in another. If you see yourself as a victim, it doesn't matter what the thing is or the degree of it. And she was arguing that the degree of it didn't, and then there was this, and I was like, wait a minute, am I? Suddenly, it was, it became really intense. And since to the point where she said I was upsetting her. And I'm thinking in my head, I didn't even bring this up. It was like it was a trauma. It was something that came up. I had said, like, I lit a match to a bonfire, right? And it was evident to me that she hadn't had anybody else to discuss this with. She was married and her husband was sitting right next to her. And the only thing I could do is say, I've got to go. And she said, I just want to let you know that I'm very upset by this conversation. And I said, well, you're allowed to be. You're allowed to be very upset. And I think that's fine. Well, express your feelings. I'm not here to shut them down. And in my head, I'm thinking, wow, this is a prime example. I'm asking myself, why did this happen? Why did I choose this experience? Why am I here?
Right. You're asking, why is this happening for me? I understand, Michael.
conformity. Yeah, I'm going, what was it? And I've been thinking about this for the last, since Friday. I've been thinking, I've had dreams about it. And I'm like, and I've worked it through in my mind. And the only thing I can think of is that she needed to be exposed to a different perspective.
Right.
And wasn't ready for that perspective on top of that.
Well,
wasn't ready for it.
Interesting, because I feel like, and this is just intuitively, I sort of feel like you unmasked her and she wasn't ready to take off that mask, that you were asking for her in unspoken words as she started to speak about, we're tuning into the victim, letting go of the guilt or blame or fear that perhaps has kept her from her own inner space for self-mastery. And you work from that place and you look at that all the time. And not a lot of people are at that space. And I totally understand that. And you live from the heart. You, instead of reacting, you respond. And there's a big discernment between the two, responding rather than reacting and allowing love to guide you through your course. And it's interesting because we talked about charting the course last week and we talked about when the storms arise. What happens and how do we ground ourselves? We ground ourselves in that love and authenticity, and that becomes our steady anchor. That's part of your superpower. And you were sort of there to assist her, although you may not have realized it, in whatever capacity, and sort of like a tugboat that guides these larger vessels on the water through narrow channels. And these vessels wouldn't be able to navigate through those channels without that assistance. It's sort of what I'm seeing in my mind, that you were there as a vessel to help navigate her through these choppy waters, but there was too much fear for her to be able to see that. But who knows what unfolded after that conversation? Maybe when she went home,
Well, I had found out recently, I found out last evening actually, that she had given, when I had gone to the restroom, she had given, before this whole thing happened, she'd given my girlfriend Sandy her number. And when Sandy texted her to see how she was, she totally ghosted, never responded back. But I brought up the idea of forgiveness in the conversation, because I said perhaps forgiveness would be something that would help move you forward, because you're not the same person that you were back then. You're a grown, warm, sensitive, and loving individual. And she said, forgiveness. Forgive what? Forgive who? It's like the who. I can't never forgive this. I'm going, well, wait, hold on a second. Forgiveness, you're not forgiving somebody for doing something to you. You're forgiving yourself for being helpless in that situation, for feeling helpless. Your feelings of helplessness, your feelings of not being able to stop it, that diatribe of negativity is going through your head, that self-blame, that shame, and that's happening. You're forgiving yourself for that. That's what you're forgiving yourself for. She didn't necessarily want to hear that, but she couldn't wrap her mind around anything other than, I'm forgiving the person who did this to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, that's not what I'm talking about. And in the end, I was just I was stunned, number one, by the explosion of feelings that were being emanated from her. And it happened all so quickly, and it happened in a crowded place. And it didn't get really loud or boisterous or anything like that. I just felt myself taken over by like another entity. And I was just, Andy calls it very intense. And I said, I felt intense. I was so intense, I was to the point of shaking. That's how intensely I was getting this point across about being a victim and how that dropped your power and how forgiveness. And I even mentioned Ho'oponopono, and I told it to her. I said it out loud to her like twice. I said, this prayer of forgiveness will move you forward. And it's interesting because she wasn't in a position, she was worked up emotionally, and I understood at that particular point that nothing else I say was going to matter. Nothing else.
Where she couldn't hear you. I understand.
Nope, not willing to, because I had already, she had made a judgment already about this equating anything else I said to being not as bad as what had happened to her. Because this is where I started the conversation with, when if you seeing someone who experiencing someone who sees themselves as a victim of cancer, right? And someone who sees themselves as a victim of other childhood traumas. Well, that's not the same thing. Are you telling me that this is the same thing as this? No, no way. That's the same thing. And I'm going, whoa. It's like, victim is victim. Victimization is victimization. If you see yourself as a victim, doesn't matter what it is, just the same result is going to occur, and sometimes in spades. So it's interesting. All I'm saying is that when we're talking about unmasking, sometimes you can be in a conversation with somebody and you just happen to, out of the blue, with something that you say, trigger something in their subconscious, trigger that tape to play, and things start happening that are way beyond your control, and you've sort of struck a chord that you didn't expect, and that does happen. And all you can do is, in love, just be in the space of love and speak from your heart and be very caring. And I gave her permission to feel, not that I needed to, but I told her, and she said, thank you. I said, you can feel any way you want to feel. And her husband said, honey, and I said, no, 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 let her feel the way that she wants to feel. I said, she has to work through that. And I appreciate I appreciate the conversation, and sorry about the way that you feel. It's a classic situation of someone who's experienced something, and it's come up. And I've had this happen before. With somebody else in my life in the past 20 years. And it's interesting when that happens, and how I get to know more about that person, maybe than I want to know in that particular moment. But I appreciate them sharing. And now I know why things happen. And I realize that with that particular individual, what I said that triggered her feelings. And I'm always cognizant of the fact, and we talk about it here on the show all the time, that sovereignty is being in complete ownership of and ruling over your mind, your body, and your spirit. You're connected with connection with something greater than you. And it reminded me of how we talk about sovereignty. And here I'm in a situation where sovereignty isn't the first thing, or the second, or the third, or the fourth, or even the 10th thing that comes to mind for this particular individual. Not out of judgment, but just out of, that's where they are in their journey. There are many people who are disconnected from sovereignty because of maybe trauma or events in their lives that are controlling them. They're ruling over them in their emotions. And I have to respect where they are in the process of their journey. And I encourage this particular woman to look at it in a different way, to step back and perceive her circumstances. I even said it, life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. I think that was like gasoline at that particular point. I think it.
Well, at a certain point, she couldn't hear you. And I'm also thinking, Michael, that part of this experience was part of your self-mastery. And we all know that self-mastery isn't about controlling the storm. It's how we master our focus. So you kept trying to bring it back to a place of love and giving examples that she could perhaps maybe anchor into. But for whatever reason, she couldn't hear you. And I thought about the writer Ilana Van Zandt, who went through a lot of trauma.
Ilana Van Zandt, right.
Her journey was incredible. I mean, if you look at where she started, her childhood was really rough, and we're talking trauma, abuse, things that would have completely broken anybody's spirit. And for a lot of people, that kind of beginning becomes the whole story of their whole life. But not for her. She did something that was really hard to do. She forgave. She actually forgave and transcended those circumstances instead of letting them define her. And she became a lawyer. And then when she realized that she had a greater calling, she went on to become a writer and a spiritual teacher. And one of her biggest messages is to know thyself, love thyself, and to let go of what you don't want. And don't be afraid to take a chance. Her book, Tapping into the Power Within, was all about self-empowerment. And it's such a great reminder that in each of us, that no matter what circumstances, we have the power to make a change for the better. I don't know all about her experiences as a child, but I know that they were pretty horrific. And she was able to heal herself and inspire people through her writing and through her journey. And that by letting go of and forgiving any of the pain and the hurt, it allowed her to reach her greatness, to sort of unmask herself too, because there was an unmasking in letting go of the shame of her circumstances and being able to elevate herself. And that, I think, is sort of what there's a saying about standing in the gap for somebody, and that I think that is what you were trying to do for this woman. Stand in the gap, hold the space, allow her, provide some tools perhaps that she would be able to help her elevate and help give her maybe more access to her own sovereignty. And yeah,
that is really exactly what I was doing at the time in the most sincere and loving way that I possibly could under the circumstances. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have, and something told me to move forward with what I was doing instead of saying, "Oh, we've touched a nerve, and I've got to go," because this is getting this. Before I and I'm not saying anything that was I didn't say anything that was, disrespectful or outlandish or whatever, but it reminded me that really we're along different points on our journey. Everybody is, and that when you come across somebody who's in a space of in their journey, maybe at the beginning, or maybe they haven't connected with their journey yet, with why they're here and why their experiences up to this particular point have occurred for them, and instead of to them, and how they can move forward. And as I reflect back on it, I can simply say that her ability to even say that she was upset by what she heard is actually positive. She understands what's impacting her. And I said, that's good. I'm happy to hear that. And I respect that. And, it was a very interesting event. Not that I want to take up the entire radio show with it, but I mean, listen, we're talking about unmasking, and unmasking can occur even from down deep when we all have situations and circumstances that have occurred to us for us in our lives that have helped shape us into the people that we are today. And understanding those, not necessarily reliving them, but getting to know how they helped you become the person you are today, in my view, can be helpful. Not to say we're using them as a crutch to say I'm this way because of this. We all have the ability to change our perceptions about what's happened to us and move past it, become more loving, more self-caring, more self-loving. And for it reminded me that we're all on a different point in our timeline. Everybody is. And all we can do is take it one step at a time. However, we have to be open to understanding that the things that happen for us for a reason. They do. And when we yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and you're putting an energy into the collective consciousness as well. That's what sort of came to my mind. And if we're we've spoken about it before. If we're moving into this place of new earth and 0 point field, whatever you want to call it, it's all about that oneness. So for you standing in the gap with this woman, it's you're opening your heart, you opened yourself up, sort of like a sacrificial lamb. Like, well, I hate to say that, but you did. You stood there and you let her be heard, as uncomfortable it was for you, and you play it over in your head because you're caring and you're compassionate, and you are working on the act of self-mastery. And so you use your gifts and you try to share and exemplify always love and connection. So I can imagine, I know, once you're empathic, so you feel it. You felt her at a vibrational frequency level. And I think that that's sort of what this, and then as you were speaking before, all I could think of was the movie Shazam. I love that movie because I think it's a great reminder that we all have the superhero inside of us. And for anybody who hasn't seen the movie, it's about a 14-year-old boy, Billy, who suddenly is transformed into an adult superhero by saying the word Shazam. He has he has an opportunity to hold this power, but he's still a little boy at heart. And what's so funny is he has no idea what superpowers he has. And so he enlists his friend Freddie, who knows all about superheroes, and they just start trying things. They try flight. No, no, it didn't work at first. And then he's like, invisibility. No, that failed. And super strength, that was a little bit better, but he still had a lot of speed bumps. They tested super speed. I think they did fire immunity and lots of other things, but they weren't sure what worked. And we don't always know what works either. But the key is they kept exploring. They kept trying new things because in real life, there is no instruction manual for your superpower. And I think that's kind of like that unmasking of we all have superpowers too, but they're buried under the mask that we wear and the mask of who we think we should be and what society expects of us, what feels safe. And so in taking off those masks, that's where our self mastery begins. It's about uncovering our authentic passions and then cultivating them. And that's sort of what we're doing for each other, right? I don't know all of my superpowers, but I'm willing to unmask and activate these powers. And then we realize the truth of oneness, that our superpowers, your gift of connection, is meant to be shared. It's the highest expression of self mastery. Then in sharing those unique gifts. And so we can't control. It's a wonderful story because it exemplifies how we can't control how other people are going to respond to our gifts. And we hope, and we're coming from a place of love, that they'll be received in that way. But we can't, and it is, and you have to ask yourself, why did it bother you? Why was it in your dream state? Because perhaps you're working that out and you're putting it into that collective consciousness and going, okay, how many other people are in the same vibrational state that she was? And how do we kind of meld those together so that there'll be a more cohesive, harmonic vibration, I guess is the word that I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's actually an awesome point. One that, when I think about this from different angles, we 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 have to understand that in order for us to grow in our journey, to evolve as individuals and to transform, that we have to be able to manage our emotions. We have to be able to understand what frequency we are vibrating at. And I didn't feel at that particular point that frequency and all that was going to be a conversation I was going to have because nothing else was getting through at that point. However, if I'd had an opportunity, which I don't think I will in the future, but it's fine. I think that I probably had said enough to spark some sort of intuition with her to maybe seek some more knowledge from various places. And I think it's going to be I would hope that she would seek other knowledge. I mean, and a couple of days later, I thought of Elle Macpherson's book that you had brought up in a conversation about in a show last year about how she had had some trauma and some events happen to her and how she worked through them, how she transformed herself, how she transmuted her pain and the suffering that happened from those events, and was able to be to journey into the awesomeness of herself today. And there are many books like that out there. People who've written them, and hopefully, I think hopefully her angels will guide her to those resources so that she can expose herself to other people who've been able to transmute trauma, to move through pain in a way that is positive for them, and where they understand the for them, what it was for, how it made them, how it can make them stronger, more loving, more self-loving, self-caring individuals. That's my wish for her, quite frankly. And I put that out into the universe during one of my meditations, that, we have to keep feeding positivity, because don't forget, the conversation did begin with her being extremely upset about politics, which was not something I wanted to be discussing when I'm out enjoying a glass of wine in a wine bar with a bunch of people that I always converse with, right? And they were new there; they hadn't been there before, and the energy was different. And perhaps that's also what drew me to her. And plus, she was from South Africa. Well, that's the other thing, because that's what started the conversation, because we're going there in a week and a half. So she told us some really great things, really awesome things, but she also alluded to some things happening about her that happened in her family, how they were extremely poor and other things were going on, and how she was able to get to where she is and find love and all that through all that. So it was a fantastic story, wonderful story. And that's when you connect with people and you ask them how they feel about various things, that's where the conversation goes. And it's wonderful to connect with people and discover things about them that they make them tick, that help you understand why they're standing in front of you and how they got there. And we aren't really this tandem's on this kind of piggybacks onto this conversation I had with somebody earlier this week about how when we don't have an identity, we assume someone else's. Okay, so it's kind of akin to, I don't have my own mask, right? I can't find one for myself. I'm going to basically get the same mask as that person, right? And I'm going to be that character because I like that character and I like them. So I'm going to do the same thing. It may not immediately resonate with you. However, we live in a world where there are influences everywhere, and human beings are very suggestive. And there's nowhere else really, and you're not going to go to school and become out and understand how to discover who you are. That's not what school is about. School is there to sort of institutionalize you as a good little consumer and a compliant individual for society. So when it comes to discovering who you are, what your gifts are, what your talents are, what makes you special, what makes you tick, there's really not much outlet for that. There aren't very many resources that you can take advantage of that will help you determine that. What's your individuality? What's your journey? What's your purpose here? And what makes you excited and happy, and what brings you, what's fun to you? And so you start reaching out and finding other people. And I'm saying this only because I see a lot of young people in their 30s who are getting cosmetic surgery to look like someone else. And I just wonder about it. I'm like, what in the world makes someone want to change the way they look? What is it about that? What is it? Do they feel somebody else is better looking than them? They don't like the way they look, so they want to look like somebody else. Will they feel better about themselves if they do that? If they change their physical appearance, when it's really the internal that drives you, and your what's going on the inside? That's where the beauty is. There's lots of beauty on the inside. And I've come across so many people, beautiful people, and in my life. And when I think back on them, what attracted me to them as friends or whatever or more was the fact that they were just beautiful people. Literally, they were kind and loving and caring, and they were looking for an outlet to express their kindness and caring. And when you're going to school, when you're a youth, that's not something that I've seen as a sign of weakness in many places, which is a shame. We have to turn that one around, right? Being kind and caring. I feel that kind of you get that institutionalized out of you, right? Being curious and kind and caring and compassionate. It's somehow branded as weakness, and that's not it at all. And I come across many adults. They're the same way. They're wearing that mask, right? They're wearing a mask. Let me bring it back to that. The mask is masking their kindness and compassion and their caring because society, again, sees that as weakness, interprets that as weakness. It's all about the shark and getting, making lots of money and making moves and decisions and stepping all over people to get to the top, that kind of thing, which is counterproductive. And I hope that with all this energy that's being thrust upon us right about now from various sources, that we, in the energetic upgrades that we're getting on this planet, that becomes that compassion and kindness and love and the display of those becomes more of the norm than the exception.
I agree. Yeah, we can. It's the unmasking of humanity. We've seen rises in superhero movies over the years and screening, and I think the collective is calling for everybody to drop their masks and move to a time where authenticity is the norm, not the exception. And I just wanted to mention to you, I have a very dear friend of mine. His name's Rashid Lani, and he's South African. And if you would ever have an opportunity to sit down with him, his story would bring you to tears because he was put into prison. He's South African, and he was really persecuted because he was speaking up for human rights and was put in prison. And when he was released, he had an opportunity to come to the United States and pursue his passion. He came to Los Angeles and had a scholarship, and he allowed his passion for music to not only heal himself, but also to heal other people. He did a soundtrack for my soul, and he composed the music as he was working on me. He will sit down and this music will just flow out of him. It's so beautiful. And in 2018, he won an award for he did the whole soundtrack for a movie called Kalushi, which was a story about a South African gentleman. But if you ever have an opportunity to meet him or see him, he has the most radiant smile and the biggest heart. And he just wraps you in love. He'll just wrap his arms around you and you can just feel the love that's emanating from him. So he was able to take off his mask of pain and move beyond that and share his true superpower, which is to just be this amazing, loving being. And he shares it through his music. He shares it through everything. And I think that we all have that opportunity to really live from the hearts and the truth of who we are.
We do. Well, you know what they say about the blues down here, right? It's you really can't. You're not really playing the blues until you've in some way lived them. That's what because it's as a transformative experience. Not entirely true. However, I believe there is a modest amount of truth to it, just from a perspective of the experiences that we have without judgment or whatever. We just have experiences, and those experiences help shape us into who we are. And when you're a musician, your experiences and help you get in touch with who you are. If you take them that way, if you're destined to move in that direction, you'll transmute those feelings and Rashid just happens to put them into a wonderfully elegant form that can touch the hearts of millions. And that's really the beauty of music. And, let's not forget, sound and light are how, when we die, sound and light are what's used to cleanse our soul of the heaviness of this reality. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for pianists, especially guitar players, because I know a couple of guitarists that are Grammy nominated. I mean, pianists are Grammy nominated that can literally melt you with the music that they just intuit. It's just spectacular. And I'm sure Rassid does the same thing. But really what he's doing is he's cleansing the soul of the world, cleansing away the heaviness that people are walking around with by the music that he has. It's very, very cleansing. And that's what we're feeling. And in my view, when I hear something like that, I hear a melody that really kind of makes me well up. It I'm thinking love. I'm thinking love. It makes me think about where I am in the process of continuing to build and stay connected to love in this world that does everything possible to disrupt love and kindness and compassion, that feeds off of the opposite of love, self-love, compassion, and empathy and joy. It's amazing. And if I could share one thing, it's that this world, that it seems that the train of negativity, the train of hate and fear and doubt and judgment and self-judgment and shame, all that whole train is in need of coming to a stop. It's barreling down. In all the digital age did was intensify. It gave it an outlet to intensify. And what we have to do is pull back from it and take off the mask that we've literally continued to build to a great thickness. Masks that really position us as who we are not, which is, we are love, we are compassion, we're joy. Yet we continue to engage with the external world and embrace a world. And I'm thinking about everything from, football season, baseball season, World Series is on, right? And the amount of energy that, in my view, gets wasted on sports and other things that are out there, things like this, and institutions that are feeding off of that energy, of that separation, right? We're better than you. You're not as good as us. They feed that separation when we're all here doing the same thing. We're all the same.
Yeah, then when we unmask, that's when we become one. And Michael, whenever you were speaking, interesting because I was in advanced English and had to memorize lots of poems. And one of the lines from one of the poems came to mind. And it was by Richard Lovelace. Stone walls do not a prison make, no iron bars a cage. Minds innocent and quiet take that for hermitage. If I have the freedom in my love and in my soul am free, angels alone that soar above enjoy such liberty. And that's that freedom. That's that love. I hear that echo in my head and I thought, wow, that's all the way back to ninth grade. But I do, I think about that. Stone walls do not a prison make or iron bars a cage. And it is about taking off that mask and allowing yourself to be the hero that you are, your authentic, true, loving self, and elevate the frequency of oneness. And I think that there's true freedom and joy in that unmasking. And that's what we all have, that capability to access. Your passion is your purpose. Your purpose is your highest form of love, and to continue to shine brightly, as you said, allow that light to shine. So thank you for that remembrance, Michael.
Okay, that is like the most perfect show ender I've ever heard. You're so amazing, and I love it. It's in the words of of the teachers, that was quite delightful. So let's leave it at that for our audience, and I'll say how wonderful the show is, and it's always a pleasure. Let's do it again.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for the inspiration, and until next time, be in love and peace out.
Bye-bye.